The Bushido rule that separates those who keep wealth from those who lose it is this: when money comes, tell nobody. This is the silent code the samurai carried not on scrolls, but in their bones. And by the end of this lesson, you will understand the final piece of this armor that most people never discover. There is a target painted on the back of every person who announces their rise. You cannot see it, neither can they, but the people around them can. The moment someone's financial position becomes visible, through the car, the renovation, the casual mention of a new investment, something shifts in the social atmosphere. It is not dramatic, it is quiet. Eyes recalibrate. People begin to calculate. The tone of conversations changes in ways that are almost impossible to describe, but impossible to miss. The samurai knew this reality long before the age of social media amplified it into something catastrophic. Visibility, they understood, is a weapon, and a weapon in the wrong hands cuts the person who revealed it. The disclosure does not just invite envy, it invites a reorganization of every relationship around what you now represent: a resource, a target, a proof of what is possible that makes other people uncomfortable about their own choices. Think about what happens in the nervous system of someone who has just watched a peer announce financial progress. The comparison triggers first. Then comes resentment, often disguised as curiosity, then requests, then tests of loyalty. The person who revealed their capital did not just share good news. They ignited a slow, invisible fire around everything they were quietly building. Picture this scene. A man works for 4 years in silence. He saves. He disciplines himself in ways no one around him bothers to. Then, one afternoon, he buys a used car, a modest upgrade, nothing extravagant. He mentions it at a family gathering. 2 weeks later, his brother needs an emergency loan. A month after that, a cousin presents a business idea that requires funding. By the 3rd month, a friend group he has known for 15 years begins treating him with a subtle but unmistakable coldness. He did not change. His choices did not change. His character did not change. What changed was the information he released. This is the family tax. It has no legal definition, but it operates with terrifying efficiency. It is the invisible levy that prosperity triggers the moment it becomes public. And unlike every other tax, refusing to pay it does not come with a fine. It comes with something worse, the label of being selfish, arrogant, or changed. What makes this particularly damaging is that the people applying that label are often not calculating. They genuinely believe their response is justified. The social machinery runs automatically. The trigger is visibility. The consequence is pressure. And that pressure, sustained long enough, bends even the most disciplined person toward choices that hollow out what they built. Stop and ask yourself honestly, how many people in your life would celebrate your financial growth without wanting a piece of it? The answer is not comfortable. The samurai warrior on the battlefield did not wear golden armor. This is not simply about aesthetics or humility. It is about tactical survival. A warrior dressed in gleaming gold does not inspire fear in the enemy. He inspires aim. Every archer on the opposite line immediately identifies the highest value target. Every sword in the field orients toward the shine. Brilliance in combat is not power. It is a request to be attacked. The same logic runs through every competitive social environment. The person who buys the loudest symbol of prosperity has not communicated success. They have communicated coordinates. They have told every person around them, every slow resentment, every quiet desperation, every competitive instinct nearby, exactly where to direct their arrows. Here is what most people miss. The art of unseen wealth is not about pretending to be poor. That is performance in the opposite direction, and it carries its own vulnerabilities. The discipline is more precise. It is about refusing to let your financial position become a social identity. Your resources are not your reputation. Your capital is not your character. The samurai who moved silently through territories did not do so because he lacked power. He did so because power concealed is power preserved. This practice is alive and deliberate among those who have truly mastered it. The person who drives a 10-year-old vehicle while holding a 7-figure portfolio The one who never mentions returns at dinner parties, not out of shame but out of strategy. Someone at a table full of competitors says nothing while the others perform. That silence is not emptiness, it is command. This is precision applied to the social arena with the same focus a warrior applies to the field. And if you have ever felt that quiet, deep exhale of relief when you simply did not have to explain your choices to anyone, if you have felt what it means to move through the world without the weight of other people's expectations pressing on your decisions, then you already understand somewhere beneath your thinking mind exactly why the samurai kept silent. Tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from right now? Because this wisdom is landing in places its authors never imagined, and that says everything about how universal this code truly is. In the Book of Five Rings, Miyamoto Musashi writes something that most people pass over too quickly. In the chapter on strategy, he says, "Suppress the enemy's useful actions, but allow his useless actions." Let those words settle for a moment. He is not saying attack everything. He is not saying display your strength at every opportunity. He is saying something far more disciplined, something that the ordinary person never practices and the master always does. Know what to conceal and what to reveal. Control the information your opponent receives about you. Let them exhaust themselves in directions that do not threaten you. And in the space created by their misdirection, you move. This is not passivity. This is the highest form of active strategy. The general who appears inactive is often the one doing the most consequential work. Apply this to resource strategy. The person who makes their prosperity visible is giving their environment full, real-time intelligence on their position, showing the sword before the strike. Musashi called this the formless strategy, the state in which your opponent cannot read your next move because you have given them nothing stable to analyze. No pattern, no signature, no predictable display. This is not theory. It has a historical precedent that few finance discussions ever reach. During the Sengoku period, the era of warring states that forged the culture of the samurai, clans that survived were rarely the ones with the most visible power. They were the ones who projected ambiguity, deliberately modest in display, economically disciplined in peacetime in ways that appeared almost unremarkable. And then, when the moment of decisive action arrived, they could deploy resources that no one knew they had. The element of surprise was not born on the battlefield. It was built in years of invisible accumulation. Tokugawa Ieyasu, who ultimately unified Japan after decades of conflict, was famous among his peers for this specific discipline. He controlled his displays of wealth and power with extraordinary precision. When others feasted, he observed. When others announced ambitions, he said little. When others spent their reserves on spectacle, he stored his. The result was not just a military victory, it was a civilization. The longest era of stability Japan had ever known. The lesson is not simply that silence worked for him. Silence was the strategy. Restraint was the weapon. The accumulation that no one witnessed became the force that no one could counter. If the strategy works well enough to build a 300-year dynasty, it is probably worth applying to your personal treasury. Now, lifestyle creep. Let us name it plainly. You receive an increase in income. Something shifts. The subscriptions compound. The dining choices upgrade without a decision being made. The car that was perfectly functional suddenly feels insufficient. None of these individual choices feel large. Together, they are a slow evacuation of everything you built. The insidious part is that lifestyle inflation is almost never driven by desire. It is driven by visibility, by what the people around you expect to see, by the silent pressure to perform a version of success that is legible to others. Here is what that performance actually costs, not just in direct spending, in the cognitive load of maintaining it, in the social obligations it creates, in the future options it silently removes. Every resource redirected toward the performance of prosperity is a resource removed from the actual construction of it. The most dangerous enemy here is not the person who asks for a loan. It is the quiet social pressure that convinces you to spend your treasure announcing that you have it. If this wisdom is landing, take a moment and press like. You are not just supporting a channel. You are signaling to yourself that you are the kind of person who builds in silence. There is a particular cruelty embedded in social environments that most people who achieve financial discipline will eventually encounter. It is called crab mentality, and it operates like this. Place a single crab in a bucket, and it will climb out. Place several crabs together, and none of them escapes. Because the moment one begins to rise, the others reach up and pull it back. Not from malice necessarily, from instinct. From the unbearable optics of watching someone else ascend while you remain still. In human communities, this instinct is disguised as concern, as unsolicited advice, as subtle social pressure, as the comment at the gathering that sounds like affection but lands like a warning. You have changed, or do not forget where you come from, or you think you are better than us now. The cruelty of it is that the person delivering the message genuinely believes they are helping. They are protecting the group from the discomfort of contrast, pulling the rising crab back not out of hatred, but because its ascent makes the stillness of everyone else impossible to ignore. Ask yourself, have you ever held back from a decision that was right for you because of what someone else might say about it? That hesitation is the crab's claw. And it has derailed more financial trajectories than any market downturn in history. Yamamoto Tsunetomo, in the Hagakure, wrote that a man who is aware of the endlessness of entering deeply into a certain way, and who never thinks of himself as having finished, that man will never be captured by the opinions of those who stopped walking. He described the highest level of mastery as one marked by permanent self-abasement, not arrogance, but also absolute insulation from the approval of the crowd. These are not contradictions. They are the same principle viewed from two angles. Genuine humility makes external validation unnecessary, and when external validation becomes unnecessary, the crab's claw finds nothing to grip. The hidden blade principle, as transmitted through the Hagakure, is not metaphor. It was a literal tactical instruction. The blade that has been shown is already less dangerous than the one that has not. The moment of maximum threat is always just before the reveal. This is the psychology of the concealed resource, the undisclosed plan, the financial position that no one around you can calculate, not because you are deceiving anyone, but because the disclosure would serve no purpose except to invite interference. Here is the deeper implication most people never sit with. Every time you speak about your income, your savings, your investments, your intentions, you are not just sharing information. You are opening a negotiation. Someone in that conversation begins calculating what they can ask for, what they can challenge, what angle they can use. Your mental bandwidth, the cognitive and emotional fuel that should be entirely committed to your next move, starts bleeding into managing those calculations instead. And that leak is not always immediate. Sometimes it compounds over months. A single disclosure creates a social expectation. That expectation generates pressure. That pressure shapes a decision. And that decision costs you something you never planned to spend. Silence is not withdrawal. Silence is concentration. The warrior in stillness before battle is not passive. He is gathering everything. Freedom is a word that gets used so casually it has nearly lost its weight. Most people define it as the absence of financial constraint, the ability to buy what you want, go where you want, stop doing what you do not want to do. That understanding is not wrong, but it is incomplete. And the incompleteness is precisely where most people get trapped. Real freedom begins where the need for external confirmation ends. Think about the architecture of your daily decisions. How many of them, honestly, are made with one eye on how they will appear to someone else? The purchase that signals something. The decision delayed because of what it might imply. You accelerate an upgrade not because it serves your strategy, but because you have grown uncomfortable looking like you have not moved. That is not freedom. That is performance. And performance is exhausting in a way that no financial achievement can compensate for. The person who earns well but spends to be seen earns for others. The one who earns and chooses invisibility earns for themselves. Seneca, in his Letters from a Stoic, described the inner fortress, the interior condition that no external event can penetrate without permission. He wrote about the practitioner who has so thoroughly secured their inner life that the opinions and pressures of the outside world arrive at the gate of the mind and simply find nothing to attack. Not because the person is cold or disengaged, but because their center of gravity has been relocated from the outer world of appearances to the inner world of principle. The fortress is not built of stone, it is built of practiced indifference to everything that does not serve the mission. Listen carefully. This principle has a specific, practical application that most people overlook entirely. You do not owe anyone an explanation for your frugal choices, not your family, not your peer group, not the colleague who raises an eyebrow when you decline the expensive dinner, not the friend who reads your disciplined consumption as a judgment of their own. The warrior who has internalized this principle does not experience frugality as deprivation. He experiences it as precision. Every resource not spent on performance is a resource added to position. The pressure to justify modest consumption is one of the most subtle and damaging forces operating against financial independence today. It does not arrive as a crisis. It arrives as small, quiet social friction, the feeling of needing to explain, to apologize, to signal that you are not being stingy, not judging anyone, not withdrawing from the group. And in responding to that friction, in spending energy managing those perceptions, you slowly erode the very discipline that is building your invisible treasure. The moment you stop needing to justify your path is the moment your path accelerates. The samurai did not explain his training regimen to the man in the street, not from arrogance, from focus. His energy had a destination, and that destination required everything he had. Chrysippus, the Stoic who systematized the philosophy that Seneca later transmitted to the world, taught that the discipline of desire is not about eliminating what you want. It is about refusing to let desire be manufactured by external pressure. The person who only wants what is genuinely useful, what genuinely moves the mission forward, becomes effectively immune to the machinery of social comparison, because that machinery runs entirely on manufactured desire, on the need to want what others can see you wanting. His teaching on silence was equally precise. He argued that serenity, the kind that compounds over a lifetime rather than flickering in moments of temporary satisfaction, comes from thoughts that are not false. And what does that mean in practice? It means building an inner life so anchored in what is real, what is true about your actual position and trajectory, that the noise others project onto you has no frequency your mind is tuned to receive. You cannot be pressured into performing success if you have genuinely ceased to need that performance. The desire dissolves before the pressure even arrives. This is not suppression. This is transformation, the highest form of financial discipline, because it operates at the level of the want rather than the behavior. This is the final armor. Not the discipline of earning, not the discipline of saving, not even the discipline of building with patience and precision, though all of those matter deeply. The armor that makes everything else sustainable, the layer that prevents what you have built from being quietly dismantled by social friction, by the expectations of others, by the slow erosion of performance-driven spending, is this: the abandonment of the need to be understood, not the abandonment of connection, not the abandonment of generosity, the abandonment of the specific hunger that makes you want the people around you to know your position, validate your progress, acknowledge your rise. The warrior who has released that hunger is genuinely dangerous in the most powerful sense, undistracted, unmanipulable. He accumulates in absolute silence and moves with absolute precision because none of his energy is bleeding into the performance of prosperity. Here is the full Bushido rule. When money comes, tell nobody, not because you are ashamed, not because you are hiding, but because the work is not done. The blade that has not been shown is still at full strength. The fortress that cannot be located cannot be besieged. The warrior who requires no audience fights with 100% of his capacity, and the one performing for applause has already cut himself in half before the battle begins. The samurai did not train for the crowd. He trained for the moment when no one was watching and everything was at stake. That moment is always now. And the people who understand what you have just absorbed, who carry this code without needing to announce it, they are the ones the world will eventually discover have been building, quietly and without interruption, something that cannot be taken away. Subscribe to Katana Wealth, not because a channel told you to, but because you recognize that the people walking this path belong in the same space. The warrior who builds alone builds forever.